In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA097.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you.
Taylor, I can't believe it's been 4 days already. I'm so good to see you. It's interesting. You haven't changed or moved at all since we last spoke 4 days ago.
I'm not going to say that I'm not going to be in the same position in like a couple days because I'm here for a week. So I'm probably going to continue to sit on this bed and
there you go.
Chill. So I think that's normal.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So welcome to Doomed to Fail, the podcast where we cover a historic and true crime story that is red flaggy as all get out. Today, Taylor is going to be sharing her story with us, which I'm very, very excited. She is currently in New York drinking a red stripe. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Drinking a red stripe, but her theme drink is a Manhattan.
It is. So yeah, as I said, I'm in New York. I'm actually a little bit above New York City. I'm in Newburgh, New York. So I'm near Hyde Park, like 45 minutes from where the Roosevelts are. So I'm going to go there in a few days and I'm super excited. I'm going to take photos and let you all know last night I was Googling where Lorena Hickok is buried. I'm going to go visit her. So stoked to do that. And I'll keep everybody posted. I'm going to put it on Instagram because that is another story that I covered a while ago. But because I'm here in New York, and I lived in New York for 13 years, so I'm excited to be back. And we're going to go to the city later this week as well. But I'm going to tell a very, very New York story. And this is a story of the murder of the architect Stanford White in 1906. And he was murdered at the theater on top of Madison Square Garden.
Sweet.
So it's a dope story. So also want to just kind of put out a warning. There's a lot of sexual assaults and spousal abuse in this story. So it's like a fun only New York story, but also like there's a lot of bad stuff. So just to let everybody know.
So it's like every story that I do. Got it.
Yeah, just FYI. My source, I did watch a movie called The Girl in the Red Velvet Swing, starring Joan Collins. Joan Collins, can you picture her? She's old now. She's 90.
Yeah,
she was in
for
American
sure.
Horror Story Apocalypse.
Yeah.
But this movie is like from the 50s and she looks the same. Like it's cute. You can definitely tell that it's still her. She's like 90 years old, still alive. But a lot of my sources was just Wikipedia and like stuff that I already knew from like I remember learning about this some of the architecture that we'll talk about in college and things like that. But on the plane on the way here, I told you I took the red eye and I can't sleep on planes, but I watched Cocaine Bear. Have you watched it yet?
No, is it good?
Oh my God, it's great. I like really liked it. So, but the very beginning of Cocaine Bear, it's directed by Elizabeth Banks, who's so funny. I just like she's like such a good personality, I feel. But the very beginning of Cocaine Bear, it has like a paragraph about bears. So it's like, you know, if a bear is attacking you, you should fight back or whatever. And then underneath it, and then it like pauses, and then at the bottom it says source Wikipedia. And I laughed for like 5 minutes because I was like, this is so funny. It's such a funny Elizabeth Banks joke to like this is from Wikipedia. I can just like imagine her laughing doing that. So I laughed out loud. So a lot of this is from Wikipedia because I'm talking about some pretty famous buildings in New York and some pretty tragic things that we did to buildings. And I'm going to start with that. Cool.
Sweet.
So have you been to Madison Square Garden, Farmers?
No.
Have you been to New York City?
I've been twice.
Okay.
I went for the U.S. Open, so really I just went from like the downtown area to Arthur Ashe.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Madison Square Garden, as you probably know, is where the Knicks play. Basketball is played there. Because I lived in New York for so long, I saw a bunch of things there. I saw the circus there. I saw Gwen Stefani there. I saw the Knicks. I was in terrifying nosebleed seats when I saw them. That's where I saw the New York Liberty and I had floor seats, and that was really cool. I graduated from college there. So like we did a graduation at Madison Square Garden, which was fun. It's fine. I'm going to actually talk shit about it later. It's pretty ugly. Penn Station is the train station underneath it. It's like a pretty ugly 60s monstrosity of a building. And the Madison Square Garden that we know today is actually the fourth Madison Square Garden. So I'm going to tell you about all of them. The first one, there was a space that was a railroad station in 1871 in New York City on 26th and Madison Avenue. And it was moved to Grand Central Station. And so they left this building that used to be a train station open. And P.T. Barnum rented it. And he changed it into the Great Roman Hippodrome, which is fun and like ties back to the things because he made it oval and made it into a place where there would be like races, and he had his like circus shit there. There was a band leader who named it Gilmore's Garden and had flower shows and beauty contests, music concerts. The first, it had walking marathons in the Hippodrome part of it. The first Westminster Kennel Dog Show was there, and I think it's still at Madison Square Garden today. That was in 1877. There was boxing before boxing was legal, so there were exhibitions instead of fights. In 1879, a Vanderbilt named it Madison Square Garden. There were famous bike races in the Hippodrome. P.T. Barnum came back with an elephant. It didn't have a roof, so it was like really hot in the summer and really cold in the winter, so it really wasn't going to work as like a building to continue to do things in, because it was kind of falling apart. So that's the first one. In 1889, a group of like quintessential New York rich guys, J.P. Morgan, Andrew Carnegie, and Astor, bought it and spent $500,000 building a new building in the same spot. So the second Madison Square Garden is where our story takes place. When it was built, it was the city's second tallest building. It had a main hall, which was the largest main hall in the world. It had permanent seating for about 8,000 people. So it was like a pretty big space. It had a 1,200 seat theater on the roof and the largest restaurant in the city, and that was like the Roof Garden Cabaret. The second MSG also had the 1924 Democratic National Convention, boxing matches, the first indoor football games, more dog shows. It was really like a beautiful, like, it's like a neoclassical building. At the top of it, there was a statue of the goddess Diana with a bow and arrow. And that was like pretty famous, and it's in a museum now. It was never a financial success, so it was torn down in 1926, and now it's the New York Life building. And that one was made by an architect, Cass Gilbert, who's pretty famous. So that building is still there in that spot.
Wait, hold
So
on. What was torn down then if the building is still there?
no, the new building is still there. The New York Life building is still there.
Okay, okay, got it.
But the second Madison Square Garden is gone. So like that building was only there for like 20 years or something, and then they tore it down. The third Madison Square Garden was built on 8th Avenue between 49th and 50th, which is closer to where it is today. It also had the circus. It had a lot of hockey. It had the Stanley Cup finals were there. There were dog shows, but it was kind of a shittily built place to have events. You couldn't really see from all the seats, and it didn't have a lot of ventilation, and everybody was obviously smoking all the time. So it would get like really smoky and like kind of weird in there. But it also had some like really cool events in it. There were rallies for FDR, Cleveland, and Hoover, so a lot of presidential things. In 1937, there was a boycott Nazi Germany rally held there, sponsored by the American Jewish Congress and the Jewish Labor Committee. The mayor, LaGuardia, who was the mayor, was there, so it was like a big event. 2 years later, there was a pro-Nazi event there by an organization called the German American Bund, and that was 20,000 people who were in support of the Third Reich. There were
What year was
communist.
that?
That was 1939.
That's
And you can see pictures of it. There's
crazy.
like Nazi flags like in Madison Square Garden,
That's
even
so
though
crazy.
it's not the one we have now, it's the third one, but still, and the same place where like FDR had things. So it's like
Yeah.
you could just like have it. There were communist rallies on March 9th, 1942. So it kind of goes back and forth. It's like anti-Nazi, Nazi. In 1942, there was a mass memorial service for about 2 million Jews that had been murdered, in Europe by the Nazis. It was called the We Will Never Die service, and about 40,000 people attended. So that was like a big thing that happened. There was a rodeo. This is actually also the place where Marilyn Monroe sang Happy Birthday to JFK, which I'm sure you've seen
Oh
that.
yeah, Mr. President. Yep.
Mhm. Billy Graham had some things there. So it was actually torn down in 1969. Like again, this one was torn down. It was also pretty beautiful to build the new Madison Square Garden, even though the new Madison Square Garden was not built in the same spot. They just tore it down anyway, and it was a parking lot for 30 years.
Oh wow.
Eventually, in 1989, they built One Worldwide Plaza, which is like another building that's on that spot right now. So the one we know today, the actual Madison Square Garden that you can see today, is where Penn Station used to be. So the original Penn Station was where it used to be. It's on 8th Avenue between 31st and 33rd Streets. It's real ugly. I know you looked it up. I think it's ugly. The Penn Station below it is even uglier. It's like pretty awful. It's
What do you
a
mean the
tragedy.
Penn Station below it?
The train station is below Madison Square Garden. It's like in the
The
basement.
the actual so wait, Penn Station isn't below it. The original Penn Station is below it that is abandoned, right?
There's a train station underneath Madison Square Garden.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, I'm learning things.
Yeah,
I'm not a New York guy. Like New York is like my least favorite place in the world. I hate going there and I hate being there and it's too busy. And I know people have
I love
feelings
it.
about it.
That's
I
fine.
know. I'm the only one. I know that I'm unique. That I just have no ambition of learning more about it or not learning more about it. I'm interested in like the human history of it all, but I just don't. I'm not familiar with like
Yeah,
where's
yeah.
Penn Station. Where? Okay,
That's why
that's
I'm
what I'm at.
telling you. That's why
I
I'm
know.
telling you, Fars. So, okay, so here's the tragedy. And this is what I learned in my art history degree. So this is my $100,000 story to tell you. Is Penn Station used to be there. Penn Station was fucking gorgeous. It was completed in 1910. It was demolished in 1963 to build MSG. It was built originally by McKim, Mead and White, which is Stanford White's firm. We're going to talk about Stanford White in a minute. It had a beautiful facade. It had huge like gates. It had columns and marble. Inside it was a huge open room, and on the ceilings were made of glass, and there were these turrets made of iron, and it was just like absolutely beautiful. They wanted to build like a bigger place, and they needed like a new spot for trains, so they tore it down. And people didn't really believe they were going to do it until they actually did it. In the New York Times, that New York Times editorial board wrote, quote, "Until the first blow fell, no one was convinced that Penn Station would really be demolished or that New York would permit this monumental act of vandalism against one of the largest and finest landmarks of its age and Roman elegance. It was taken apart piece by piece. Some of the statues and columns were thrown into a swamp in New Jersey. They just threw
Jeez.
it away. This beautiful building, they just threw it away.
Why do they need to get rid of it in the first place?
They just wanted to build like something bigger that could like hold more people and make more money and do all of that.
Hmm.
So, because the trains weren't making as much money as they used to, so they needed to have like the venue as well. That's
Oh,
what they
okay.
got it, you know. You can still across the street from Madison Square Garden is the post office that still has that same look. So you can see what like you can imagine what it used to look like. And you can obviously see photos because it wasn't taken down until the 60s. Um, so one good thing that came out of it, because they literally just threw it away. It was like a beautiful building. Some of the pieces were like dug out of the swamp and like put in museums because that's how like beautiful they were. They just threw it all away. But because of this, we have the National Register of Historic Places. Because after that, people were like, "Oh shit! Like we can't just continue to tear things down in America. You know, this is a fourth of this building. So now you can't destroy things. Like some beautiful facades and some buildings are protected. When I was in Dallas, a few months ago, like there were some buildings where they're like building modern buildings, but behind an old facade. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, which I think is like lovely. Keep the art, update the building. I get it. So they're doing that. That's the story of the Madison Square Gardens and the National Register of Historic Places, which actually is gonna saves like a ton of buildings, which is great. But we're talking about the second one, the one that had the outdoor theater, because we're gonna go back and talk about the murder of Stanford White.
Okay.
Cool. That was just like a side quest into Madison Square Garden.
Love it.
So our three characters are Stanford White, Evelyn Nesbit, and Henry K. Thaw. So Stanford White is an architect and like a highfalutin New York City dandy guy. He was born on November 9th, 1853. You can Google him now. Did you Google him? Stanford
No.
White? Because the elephant in the room is his mustache. And I want you to look at it. Everyone, pull over. It's insane.
That it's man. He
He looks like
was.
Ned Flanders.
Yeah. No. He. Okay. Ned Flanders is a pretty good descriptor. Um.
It looks like a broom. Like it's just huge and like very bushy. I think
It's.
it's crazy.
Yeah. He definitely can have breakfast for dinner
Yes,
with that thing.
exactly. Exactly. So if you look him up, that's the distraction. In the movie, he does not have that mustache because I don't think you can't even make it look good.
No.
It's just
No.
impossible.
It looks. They think you're faking it. Like.
Yeah. Oh, also yeah, it's unbelievable. So Stanford White, he designed Madison Square Garden, the second one. He designed the arch in Washington Square Park, very neoclassical. He wasn't officially trained in architecture, but he toured Europe and made some beautiful things. He made some Gatsby style mansions on Long Island, like it's like the 1900s, like that kind of style. He was married to a woman named Bessie Spring Smith. She was a socialite, and they had one son. So he was a notorious like playboy, but specifically with young women, like too young women, like way too young, like young teenagers, like not the age of consent young. He had an apartment on 24th Street where he would bring women to like these parties, and like I say women, I mean girls, like girls to
Right.
these parties. To get into it, there was a secret entrance at the back of an FAO Schwartz, for
Oh
fuck's sake.
wow.
So like really attracting young girls. The top floor had a room, and the room was painted like a garden. So it had like windows, and there were like leaves painted on the wall. In the middle of the room was a red velvet swing that he would like have the girls swing on. He would like push them on the swing.
Jeez.
It's real bad. But that's where the name of the movie comes in, The Girl in the Red Velvet Swing. It's really good. So definitely recommend watching it, but it definitely kind of romanticizes him as a person. He had a group of friends called the Union Club, and they would do this together. They would essentially get young girls, get them drunk, drug them, and take advantage of them. So definitely like a predator. He
Yeah.
would just he would like give them money because he was rich, so he would like pay for their stuff, kind of be their benefactor, but like expect sex in return. And this is how he meets Evelyn Nesbit. So she's our second character. So Evelyn was born Florence Evelyn Nesbit on Christmas Day in either 1884 or 1885, no one's sure, in Pittsburgh. Her family was poor and her father died, and her mother tried to make ends meet as a seamstress. So in the movie, they really stress her mom was like being around chorus girls because of the clothes. But eventually Evelyn, like she does get into like the theater, and they moved to New York when she's around like 14, 15. So she's like a model and a chorus girl, whatever that means. She's sort of the quintessential Gibson girl. Do you know what a Gibson girl is? Like
Is
you
that a
don't.
flapper?
No, it's like before flappers. It's there's a man named Charles Dana Gibson, and he was an artist, and he would draw these women, and it's like a hairstyle that like I try to do sometimes. I'm gonna try to do it. You like pull your hair out so it's like big and like
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And so like it's like be like I do
It's a
this sometimes when
beehive,
I'm
right?
kind of. It's like a little bun at the top, and like your hair is really big, and like it's like a Gibson girl. It's like a 1910s, like a 1900, like kind of like sassy cute girl look. Men wanted to take really good care of her. So she's cute, she's sassy, they liked it. She's still really young, you know. It's kind of style that she had. It's kind of implied that her mom wasn't devastated with her being friends with men, you know, like they painted pictures of her naked when she was like 14, 15, you know, very young, and it was like bringing in money, so the mom kind of let it happen. And unfortunately, you know, that's part of the time too. It's also like in my family, it's implied that my great grandma may have like loaned some of her daughters out during the Depression. It's just like, well, you know, what do you do? It was a bad time. But Evelyn was on the cover of Vanity Fair and Cosmo, like drawings of her, some pictures of her. I want you to Google her also.
Yeah, I did.
Um, you did. So I think she was cute. I know you won't think she's cute because you're picky and you don't have an eye for different time periods. Am I
I
right?
definitely thought she was cute.
Did you? Because I feel like usually you're like, I like a very specific modern woman.
She had no, I mean, she has like a, I don't know how to describe it. She has this like regal elegance look to
Hmm.
her that's like also sultry.
Nice. All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Agree,
I
agree,
mean, you can
agree,
tell she's a
agree.
model. Like
Yeah,
she's obviously a model.
totally. So Evelyn and Stanford White meet and they have a relationship, quote unquote. You know what I mean? Like he like gives her money and buys her things and all of that. He persuades her mom to go out of town, and it's like, oh, I'll watch over Evelyn.
Oh my
Great,
God.
thanks. You know, so he takes her to his apartment with a swing. It starts with them kind of like drinking champagne. He drugs her champagne, and she wakes up naked in a bed covered in blood because he had raped her and taken her virginity. Virginity is a social construct, which I think is like something to talk about later, but it's still bad, obviously, because he raped her while she was passed out. They have a relationship for a while, whatever that means. You know, like in the movie, it's actually quite sweet that they like are in love, and he's like, "I love you, but I also love my wife. I don't know what to do," which he very well might have said to her, you know, like and said to these women, but like I can't leave my wife, obviously, also because like you're a child. Um,
Yeah.
but eventually it does fade, and he sees other girls, and they kind of stop, like whatever that was. Like I can't say dating, whatever. He stops. She had a thing with John Barrymore of the Barrymores, like the acting family. She meets him at Stanford White's house, and he asks her to marry him, and she says no. They meet later in 1939, and he dramatically announces that she was the love of his life, which is super cute. And he is very handsome, just for the record, John Barrymore. So eventually, Evelyn marries a Pittsburgh rich guy named Henry K. Thaw, and he's our third person in the story. He is crazy. He is just like not together at all. He was born February 12th, 1871 in Pittsburgh. He's very rich. He is one of 11 children, but he's a weird kid. He would like have temper tantrums and like walk in a weird zigzag pattern. He made everybody really, really uncomfortable. He would talk like a baby to get what he wanted, and he would do that even when he was a grown up, which is gross.
Yeah.
Um, he kind of looks like if you look at looking at pictures of him, like I can't pin him down. He looks just like a weird guy. Like, I don't know. He has
I
something
mean,
special about him.
it's so hard to tell because like it's just different times, you know.
Hmm.
But I mean, he looks like he could be in Road to Perdition on the bad side.
Yeah. He definitely doesn't look like a good guy.
He doesn't look
Whatever
like a
that
good
means.
guy.
Yeah. Yeah. So he ends up going to Harvard because he's rich and like gets into Harvard, you know. But all he does is like play poker. But he gets in fights with people all the time. He causes a scene. He would light cigars with $100 bills, you know, just like being an asshole. He was expelled from Harvard, and it didn't say exactly why, but when he was expelled, they were like, you have to leave in 3 hours. Like, get the fuck out of here.
Jeez.
So like no one liked him. They couldn't even buy his way out of that. After his father died, he was given an $8,000 a month allowance. Today, that's about $290,000 a month from
That's
his mom.
crazy.
So he just like had money to like throw away, and he did. Every time he did something wrong, his mom would clean it up with money. He traveled to Europe, and he got in trouble for whipping a bellboy in London, and he ended up giving that bellboy $5,000 to keep him quiet. He went to like all the brothels, he threw huge parties, and he would do things like as a parting gift, you'd get like a diamond necklace, you know, like he was just like dumb rich and didn't care.
Yeah.
But he wants to be a part of society, like we've seen before with like a bunch of these dudes. And he moves to New York and he tries to get into all these different clubs. The Metropolitan Club, the Century Club, the Knickerbocker Club, the Players Club, just like these like rich dude clubs, even the Union League that White was a part of. But he doesn't get in, specifically for the Union League. He didn't get in because he rode a horse up the steps and they were like, this is embarrassing and it's behavior unbefitting of a gentleman. So he didn't get in. But he's convinced that White is the reason he's not allowed in any of these. And like he might as well, he didn't have anything out for him, but he surely was like, that guy's weird, you know. But
Yeah.
but everybody felt that way because he was just weird, like trying to get
Yeah.
into things.
This is that social hierarchy thing where like being rich isn't enough. You have to be like well
Hmm.
coiffed and
Hmm.
all that. So
Yeah, he just didn't have the personality to like get in. You know, he did
yeah.
like everything else. Yeah. So at one point he was mean to a chorus girl, and he has a party and the chorus girl gets all the women who are supposed to go to the party to go to Stanford White's apartment instead. So he's just like, I hate that fucking guy. He just like hates Stanford White so much. He's also obviously on drugs this whole time. He's doing speedballs, he's drunk all the time, like losing his mind. He meets Evelyn at one of these parties and he's obsessed with her. He starts like giving her compliments and gifts and being like, why isn't this enough? Like, why won't you marry me? She keeps turning him down, you know, obviously, but he just like can't figure out why she doesn't like him. He takes her to, she gets sick. She has an appendectomy, and he takes care of her during this. So he's like, you owe me, you know,
Right.
essentially. And he takes her to Europe, and like Stanford White has already told her, she was like, don't he was like, don't hang out with this guy. He's no good, you know, but he kind of sweeps in when she needs him. He takes her to Europe, and he presses her to tell her about what happened with her and Stanford White. So no matter how it happened, he continues to be like, he drugged you and raped you. He did these things to you. And she's like, he did. And she like tells him what happened, but he makes her tell him over and over again. He like is obsessed with this like idea of this like beautiful virginity and obsessed with the fact that Stanford White did this to her. And he like makes her talk about it all the time, like relive the trauma over and over again. He can't stop thinking about it. He it takes her all over Europe to like these like virgin martyrdom spots to where Joan of Arc was born, and he signs a guest book and said Joan of Arc would not have been a virgin if Stanford White had been around. Like,
Jeez. Wow. He is over the top.
yeah. So he's just like going nuts. He gets her mom to leave and he keeps trying to get her to marry him. And in the movie, where they've romanticized a lot of this, because it's like a 50s movie, he takes her to the top of a oh, the movie has like really great fake backgrounds. He takes her to the top of like a mountain in like the Alps, and he like asks her to marry him. And he's like, is this about White? All these things. And he slaps her, but he's like, I love you, just like very abusive. And that's like the least of it, because in real life, he took her to a castle and he locked her in a tower essentially for 2 weeks, where he beat and raped her, just like going crazy and like
Jeez.
screaming about Stanford White. He's just like terrible. So she's being super abused by this guy, and eventually at one point like he Stanford White like tries to get her away from him and sends her to a boarding school. That's how young she is also during all of this. Like, she's still really
Jeez.
young.
Yeah.
Um So she's definitely being abused, and they end up getting married in 1905. So Henry Thaw and Evelyn Nesbit get married. He like picked out her dress, like all the things. He in the movie, one of his goons says to his mom, "Well, now your daughter has $40 million," and the mom says, "He couldn't have me for 41 million." Like because I'm sure people were like, "Oh God,"
Yeah.
you know.
It is
Um,
weird how Stanford White is starting to flip into the good guy of the story.
I know it is weird because he does feel like the good guy, even though he's a bad guy. But in this
Yeah.
case, it's like two bad options. Um, so he continues to be obsessed with Stanford White. He's worth, like I said, $40 million, which is about $1.5 billion today. He's just like
Jeez.
super rich. So on June 25th, 1906, en route to Europe, so they live in Pittsburgh, they're going to take a ship to Europe. They stop in New York with two goons, and the four of them go to the theater at Madison Square Garden. So it's open outdoors, and Stanford White is there. So everyone's probably a little nervous because they know that like those two are together and they don't get along. Thaw is kind of going crazy, walking back and forth, doesn't know what to do. They try to leave. Eventually, during the finale of the show, he goes up to him and yells, "You ruined my wife," and shoots him 3 times from 2 feet away, and he dies instantly.
Wow.
People go crazy. It's the middle of the show, you know? So people start screaming and like running, like to get out of the theater. He might have said, "You ruined my life," but people heard him say, "You ruined my wife." Either way, he like is just obsessed with the fact that he had done this to Evelyn. Um, so afterwards, Evelyn says, "What did you do?" And he said, "I saved your life." Um, who knows what he means by that? I kind of feel like he meant that he might have killed her eventually, you know?
He sounds like a unhinged maniac.
He is an unhinged maniac. Yep.
Yeah.
hmm So he's put on trial. During the trial, all this stuff comes out about Stanford White because no one knew. Like his friends knew, but no one knew like the things that he had done. So like people at first they were like very sympathetic to the fact that like, oh, he just got killed, but then they start hearing these stories of the things that he had done. One of the reporters at the trial was Mark Twain.
Oh
Um,
wow.
yeah, and he said, quote, "Everyone knew now that White eagerly and diligently and ravenously and remorselessly was hunting young girls to their destruction. These facts have been well known in New York for many years, but have never been openly proclaimed until now. On the witness stand in the hearing of a courtroom crowded with men, the girl, Evelyn Nesbit, told in the minutest detail the history of White's pursuit of her, even down to the particulars of his atrocious victory, a victory whose particulars might well be said to be unprintable." So now they know that he was doing all these
Yeah.
things. That doesn't make it Thaw less crazy, you know?
Yeah,
He
I
still shooting more
guess.
people. So the jury is deadlocked to have a second trial. He ends up being locked up for life in an insane asylum in Fishkill, New York, the Mattawan State Hospital for the Criminally Insane, which I am 5 miles from right now. It's really close to where I am right now. He escaped at one point, went to Canada. He's still like getting money. He's still rich, like he eventually does get out. And they remained married for a while, actually. Evelyn got pregnant in 1910. She said it was during like a conjugal visit with him, but they get divorced in 1915. He gets out and lives to be 76. He just like lives as like a rich, kind of eccentric, weird guy. After having done this, um, she Evelyn marries a dance partner, Jack Clifford. They travel around Europe. She's kind of like a semi-successful chorus girl, attraction, burlesque girl for the rest of her life. Eventually, she moves to Los Angeles. She's an advisor on the movie The Girl in the Red Velvet Swing, which must have been really traumatizing to like, I don't know, be there and like watch it happen again. She has a stroke in the middle of filming. At the age of 82, she dies a year later. And Evelyn Nesbit is buried in the Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City,
Oh
so she
wow.
lives in LA.
Um, they had their kid Russell. Wow, he lived till 1984. Yeah, he was a
Yeah.
silent film actor too.
Um,
Um, so wait, this guy got out of jail after killing somebody?
because he
Man,
was
money
rich.
helps a lot. Money helps so
Exactly.
much.
Yeah.
Like,
And
guys, if you're poor, stop it. Like, go get
100%.
money. Like,
Get money and then commit crimes.
and then commit,
And then commit more crimes.
and then commit more
You can
crimes.
get your money in a Ponzi scheme, then commit crimes. I have one more thing. There's a New York Times article written in 2007 called "The Girl, the Swing, and a Row House in Ruins." Stanford White's apartment, the building it was in, was torn down in 2007. It was falling apart. It had not been maintained. And the reporter was watching it get torn down, and a man who lived on the street for 20 years, he said he had heard that an architect had lived there, but he goes, I didn't think about it. I don't care much about pedophiles. It was just another old New York building. There were rats on the bottom and pigeons on the top.
Wow.
So building torn down. And then also one more thing, there's a cute YouTube video of Evelyn singing in like the 1930s about how she doesn't have a man and she's really happy, and you just feel real happy for her
Good for her.
because you're like, yeah, no, men were shit to you, dude. So good
Yeah,
for
she
you.
had a rough go of it.
Hmm.
I love the Mark Twain piece. It's like history's so amazing. It all just kind of overlaps somehow.
I know, I love it. And like I feel like we've talked about P.T. Barnum before. We know what a hippodrome is, like all the things that like
It all
tie
comes full
into
circle.
full circle. We know everything. So
Sweet. That was very
yeah.
cool. I do like the historical part of it is especially with a place like New York that is so historical and has so many stories in it is always really
Hmm.
really fascinating.
Hmm.
And now I know. You know what's funny is I thought MSG was actually a square.
No, it's like a weird circle.
Yeah, I mean I looked
Hmm.
up the picture while you were talking, but for
Hmm.
some reason I've always seen it like it's like a black box square like on one point.
Hmm.
I mean, is it the Barclays Center maybe? Is that what I'm thinking of?
Is that the one in Brooklyn?
I don't know. What does Barclay look like? Barclay Center.
That is in Brooklyn.
I don't know anything about New York. No, that's not it
Nice.
either. You know what?
I'm
I
gonna
just
take you to New
imagined
York
that.
sometime, Fars. Well,
Yeah.
let's have a tour stop in New York City. That'll be real fun.
I mean, I typically go to DC like at least once every 3 months, give or take, and I think it's only a
Hmm.
2 hour train ride to New York from there.
Yeah, it's not bad.
So maybe that should be the
I
next
think
trip.
you may end up in Penn Station and you can see how ugly it is.
There you go. There you go.
Hmm.
Well, Taylor, thank you for sharing, especially a New York story while you're in New York.
Thank
Hopefully you
you.
get to enjoy that, enjoy Hyde Park, enjoy seeing the graves of the Roosevelts.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. I'll try to drive by this insane asylum as well. It's still there. I think it's still called the place for the criminally insane, which is cool.
Wait, it's still operational?
I think so.
What's it called?
The um Matawan State Hospital for the criminally insane. And when Thaw escaped, he like walked out because he's rich. You know what I mean? Maybe it is. It's a medium security prison. No, it says was founded. Oh, closed in 1977. Well, what is it? It has 6 Google reviews. How does something that closed such a fun place to host parties? My 6-year-old never had more fun. That makes no sense. Okay, wait.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
it's part of the Fishkill Correctional Facility now.
yeah. It's pretty.
Terrifying, absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
Old abandoned insane asylums. Oh
Love
God,
it. Who doesn't?
I know.
Who doesn't?
Sweet.
Yeah. Oh,
Well,
oh,
go
I'm
ahead.
so
Sorry.
sorry. I had to do one more mail.
Yes.
Listener mail. Kiara, who's our first person who ever emailed us, emailed back, and she was also in New York recently, and she was down at One Trade Center, and she was taking photos, and she saw this couple, and this couple was like really, really good looking. Like the girl was dressed in like a 1940s dress, and the man was dressed in like a traditional Korean outfit, and she was like, "Oh, he looks so good." She took a picture of them from afar, and then she like went up to them and she was like, "You guys look so good. I just took this picture of you like by the sunset. Can I send it to you?" And she was like, "Oh, totally." So she took it. But the woman who she took a picture of was Tylee Ryan's cousin.
I don't know who that is.
She's the daughter that Lori Vallow killed.
Oh my God.
I know, isn't that crazy?
That's
She just like happened to see this like woman who's like, "Oh, she looks so pretty. I'll take a picture." And it happened to be Tylee Ryan's cousin. So I was like,
how did she know?
she like got her Instagram to give her the picture that she took of her, and then it was like on her Instagram was like, "Oh, my justice for Tylee, blah blah blah."
That's wild. That's
Yeah.
so wild. Wow. Again, it all comes together.
I know, it's very exciting.
If you haven't listened, listen to our Doomsday podcast episode about the Bala murders.
Was that our first episode?
Yeah, yeah, I think it was.
Wow.
We've come a long way, Taylor. We're so close
Ah,
to being rich and
Spars.
famous.
So excited to take you to New York City.
We are maybe like 5 episodes away from being able to kill somebody and walk away from it. That level of
Perfect.
rich. Sweet. We'll have fun,
Cool.
Taylor. Everybody,
Thank
please
you.
write to us at Doom to
Safe
Film
travels.
Pod. We will
Yeah.
see you in a week.
Cool. Thanks, friends.
Bye.
Oh, yeah. Bye.